Thank you, Nuala, and thank you for the IPM group for inviting me to speak to you today to present a different approach, maybe to forest management that we are familiar with. I am going to speak to you, as I say, about continuous cover forestry. What is it? Maybe give some definitions and terminology around the term. Why do CCF? What are the benefits, and maybe a little bit on a very brief thing as to how do we go about it. I speak briefly on in Irish how CC continuous cover forestry will apply in an Irish context, as many people consider these silviculture systems only apply to Europe, but no, they don't. They can equally apply here in Ireland. And then maybe just a final slide, maybe consider the continuous cover forestry and the integrated pest management. So in essence, in terminology, and you see on the left hand side there a lot of terms. Continuous cover forestry, well, basically in simple, continuous cover forestry is what it says in the tin. It is a continuous, you can maintain forest cover the whole time. Other terms that are used are close to nature management, and that we're adapting natural processes in the forest and maintaining a natural forest. Irregular forest management. You're creating an irregular structure in your woodland. In Ireland, we primarily have even-aged woodlands. All the ones kind of even age and the one level. Here we're creating an irregular structure in both in the vertical and horizontal, and creating gaps in your woodland. It's a familiar term, low impact silviculture systems. Does again what it says. It's creating low impact in your having low impact in your forest. Clearfell is a high impact in the forest area, so this is a system which adopts low impacts for forest systems. The other three terms then: ecological forestry, uneven age forestry, permanent forest, and that's what we're creating, is the permanent forest. But the definition that I like to use most is continuous cover forestry is a management approach whereby forest stands are maintained in a permanently irregular age structure which is created and sustained through selection and harvesting of individual trees or small groups of trees. So that definition incorporates a lot of those terms there. So what are the benefits? I suppose these are the four main topics I'll speak further on now, but they're mainly it's the conservation of the ecosystem that is the forest. You're maintaining the biodiversity and enhancing the biodiversity and the habitats within the forest. It provides, if you're adopting CCF management, it provides these protection functions as well. The protection of soil, protection of water. And of course it has to be economically viable. Forestry is a land use, it has to be economically viable, it has to give the owner returns for money, but it also has to be viable to pay me if I'm by managing the forest. So it has to be an economically viable option, and I hope and demonstrate some of that. But it's also, there is a societal acceptance for this, that society are kind of beginning to consider that there should be alternative ways for managing our forest, and a kind of a pushback on the Clearfell system, but it shows the other benefits that this form of management does bring. So on the conservation of the ecosystems, basically what we're doing is that we're maintaining and enhancing the biodiversity in the woodland. We're creating this natural vegetation pattern. That first picture there is from a virgin forest in Romania, where you have a range of deadwood and an irregular structure. It keeps, what we'll be doing is hoping to maintain deadwood and veteran trees within the forest. And the other element too, very important, is that you have a mixed species forest. And we'll talk that about the healthy forest down further, but a mixed species gives you a range of options within the forest. It's like a supermarket that you go in, you take what species the market is requiring at the time in your tinnings. And you're creating this irregular structure within the habitats. The mixed species and the biodiversity and the irregular structure offers a range of different habitats in the one space. It's not that this area here is for biodiversity and this one is for recreation, or this one is for as they call it, timber. You're hoping to have all those in the one place on an ongoing basis across your forest area. The other element is having a more healthy, resilient forest, and basically enhance resilience to disease, to ash dieback, to Phytophthora. I remember being in Switzerland and seeing the ash dieback for the first time extensively, but it was in a mixed forest. It was individual trees. They were taken out in thinnings. The forest wasn't maintained when the trees were removed. The same with the Phytophthora. If in the mixed forest, okay, you can just let them die back, or you thin them out, but you retain your forest in your forest condition. The insects, the spruce bark beetle, the major reason for the impact that it has on the forest across Central Europe in the last number of years, primarily caused by drought, that caused the weakness in the trees and created the conditions for the spruce bark to flourish in monocultures. The solution check in the German people they're putting forward is to have a mixed species forest, so that you don't create the situation for the insect to flourish. The other element too is the extreme weather and enhanced stability. Yes, you will get wind throw in a continuous cover forest. Yes, but we believe that if you initiate your transformation earlier, you're creating an increased stability in your woodlands. You have an irregular structure which causes a filter of that wind. You have and if you're in a more advanced stage, you have your understory in place if the big trees do go and fall. It provides the protection function. I mean, the forest soil, it's the breadbasket, as it says there, the breadbasket for the forest ecosystem. But how do you protect the forest soil? Because you have a cover on it. There you have a continual cover of different ranges of different layers of overstory, understory, shrub layer, and vegetation layer, all in one area. You have a mixed species, then they're occupying different layers of the soil. The broadleaves will have a deeper, probably rooting system. The conifers have that more shallower rooting system. And if they're mixed in, then you have the drawdown of water into different levels of the soil. The wood wide web would become more familiar with the whole fungi and mycelial connection between the trees and the soil, and the connectivity of one dependent on the other, taking the fungi helping trees to extract the nutrients, and there's a combination effect there. And then you have the carbon. In the forest, I know that 60% of the carbon is held within the soil and 40% above soil. And if you're retaining that, and I'll talk about maintaining that asset, if you retain your forest cover, you're retaining the carbon in the soil, and you're retaining it in the above ground scenario as well. There's the protection to the watercourse, again by maintaining cover, as opposed to a clear fell layer, because you do again have those vegetation layers. And in the clear fell, you have the potential for runoff, and in a CCF, you have that you minimise the situation for clear fell. In the carbon as well, when you're doing mounding and that, we know of that the carbon forests are going to be an emitter because of this big areas of clear fell that are going to be coming. But if you maintain your forest or even extend your forest rotation, then you're withholding that carbon within the forest and within the soil. And forest cover and continuous forests are being muted for holding areas for natural flood management. We were talking to Roger a while ago. I remember being in England, and up in the Lake District, and most of the forests up there are all being getting over the lakes, and the reservoirs in the Lake District are the reservoirs for Manchester and Liverpool and all that area, and they are regarded as protection forests. They're managed under continuous cover forestry, though. They're still able to draw from it. And financial, basically, where you get your income, you get it from ongoing thinnings. So what you're doing, you look at it in two different ways. You're minimising costs, because of course you're not going to be doing planting, so that's the minimal thing. You might do some underplanting or enrichment planting, but basically you're doing what we call biological automation, which means you're getting your replanting through regeneration. The forest is providing the regeneration. And you don't have to be doing pruning, because there's a natural process in forest, because the trees are drawn up, they grow best underneath canopy. If you ever watch trees underneath the canopy, you'll see them how they're drawn up, and they're very light pruning on, and they have that little competition in that group that they're growing on. So in essence, the only real cost you are having is to mark your thinnings on a 3, 4, 5 year cycle, whatever it is you decide to do. And then you have a little bit of maintenance afterwards, just to go back, check out a few trees, maybe a bit of an enrichment planting, but minimal. The other aspect in is that you're focusing your value on fewer trees and enhancing the value hugely. So you're growing bigger trees as well. So you can, so that's what and you're getting a higher value from your thinnings as well. So if you kind of growing very big, beautiful trees, especially in broadleaves, where you can get very large value for, 5 or 6, the 70 or 80% of the value of a broadleaf tree is in the first 5 meters. And if you can grow big trees with the first 4 or 5 meters and feeding that gives you great value. Here you have oak on the 400 euros a cubic meter. That log was 2.5 cubic meters. That log was worth €1,000. Now, we can grow oak here in Ireland, as I say, in 100 years and less. But the other main thing of the financial, or why it's economically viable, is that what you're doing is that you're maintaining and enhancing the asset value. So if you look at the blue line, basically is representing the clear felt system. So you build up the forest, you build up a good asset, and next thing your clear felt, so bang, you're liquidating the asset, you have to reinvest, and you're going to grow up again. In continuous cover forestry, what you're doing is that you're building up the asset, and then you start taking the increment, and that grows again over the 4 or 5 year cycle that you have. Then you take the increment, but that asset value is growing because you're adding a higher value. You're growing a better, higher value tree. A Douglas fir, like growing up to 70, 80, 90 centimeters, grows at about 7% value per year because it's putting on volume and it's going up higher in the price size curve. The spruce doesn't add value as it goes up, but it puts on a lot of volume. Spruce kind of maintains maybe a 30 or 40 centimetre to hold. The present price is 100 saw log. But if you can double that 40 centimetre, a log at 40 centimetres could double its size within 10 years. So it'll grow, so it'll have doubled the volume. So you're adding €100 onto that tree in a 10-year cycle. So that value is going, but you're maintaining the value and you're maintaining and you're getting your income from the increment that's there. But it also applies in your biodiversity. You're growing the biodiversity, you're maintaining the biodiversity because you're maintaining the forest. You're probably enhancing the biodiversity because you're introducing different species, different layers in the forest, and different vertical and horizontal layers. And the same with carbon. You are maintaining that carbon level. You're maintaining, and probably it grows to an equilibrium, and then it holds there. You're not going liquidating the whole carbon and waiting for that cycle for the whole tree canopy to cover over again to maximise the potential. And you're felling big trees. In the thinning in Clore in the Pro Silva Day 2 weeks ago, 95% of their thinning was saw log. Saw log value goes into more long-term timber products. So that's those are the reasons why it is more economically valuable. And the other the other element then is maintaining landscape and maintaining forests for recreation and archaeological and cultural features. I see the time going on. Sorry, I'll move on. So how do you do it? If this is a quick element here on, this is clear felling, is the system, a graphic showing clear felling at the top and shelterwood system. But basically what we'd be aiming for is the two on the bottom, a group shelterwood system, maybe more likely for the light demanding species, and the selection system where you have that rolling system as I described in the continuous cover forestry system. So what you're doing is mimicking the natural succession of the forest. In the top graphic there, this is where most of our forests is in the second stage, and that's stem initiation, or at pole stage we call it. And then it goes on to, in a natural forest, then it moves on and you get regeneration starting, and then you have a natural kind of wind blower or windbreak or whatever, and the gaps create. So that is what we in continuous cover forestry wish to do then is that you're replicating that natural occurrence. And what we're doing mainly in Ireland is transforming even age forest to a regular forest, and you do that through an ongoing thinning cycle, tending in young stage, and the important thing is to start as early as you can. It's greater risk at the higher stage. You have to have a road network, but you have to have a permanent rack network as well, and when you put that in place at the early stages, then you'll be set up to move on to. And what you're aiming for basically is to reach a state of equilibrium. And you see the top layer is your even age forest in that picture, and then you're aiming for this second mixed species irregular structure forest. And what you're looking for is to have the, seedlings, saplings, poles, small wood, medium wood, large wood, all within the forest. That might take 50, 60, 70 years, but if you can keep garnering your income from your thinnings over time, you'll reach that state of equilibrium. And as one man said, then all you have to do is mark thinnings and shoot deer. That's all, because deer are the main aspect. So just in the Irish context, quickly to go through it, the main system is the clear fell. One of the drivers has been sustainable forest management over time, and that has been addressed basically in the Forest Service. We have the Native Woodland Scheme, and in 1919 they produced a Continuous Cover Forestry Scheme. In Teagasc there's been a lot of promotion. This is the Teagasc booklet they produced. There's been a lot of training with forest owners especially, and Mark Telescope. Last week, I know Jonathan Spatsy is today with a forest owners group in Oak Park. We set up Mark Telescopes there and in Curragh Chase. And last week we were training foresters. We gave 3 days training in foresters in the Curragh Chase area. In Quilta, I think the main driver was certification back in 99, 2000, and that brought us on. In the last number of years, they have developed the Quilta Nature and the Bioforest Project, and there's talking to Ken, there's a CCF project group as well. So there's a lot of work going on in Quilta as well on promoting. And there's a lot of research going on as well. Think of Ted Wilson's Transfer Programme and others with UCD and Teagasc. The Continuous Cover Forestry, the Irish context, the opportunities, growing conditions. We have fantastic tree growing conditions. John outlined earlier the age of our forest structure. So especially in the private sector, ideal to start young. Even about going to many of those 20-year-old crops is very, very delayed in the sense that they're growing so fast. You really want to be getting at 8 to 10 metres into your forest. And that would be the optimum time for it. There is a growing social demand for it. After one of the training courses last week, Alex Kelly from the IFO said 50% of our clients are asking them about continuous cover forestry, and there's a growing kickback against clear fells. But the challenges are basically you need to have a stable site. Who spoke about the peat layers and that earlier? Many mineral site. But the challenge would be for us as silviculturists is that when you're on a peaty pod soil, if you can go in early, yes, I think you can practice it. So there's a challenge to us as silviculturists. Vegetation, we have great growing conditions, but we have great growing conditions for vegetation as well. Deer is the one major issue, of course, but deer is a big problem for clearfell if you want to establish a mixed forest as well. Deer is very expensive. It has been one major element, and I think if society wants a mixed and new and native forest, they're going to have to address the deer issue.
Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, I'm done. A skill base, and the skill base of forestry, we've to address that. Just quick on the integrated management. Basically, you're addressing, you're creating a nirvana for the weevil, because I remember meeting Louise on one of these research sites and coming out, and she's in the traps, and we discovered there was 100,000 weevil per hectare. So you're creating a nirvana. In all my CCF sites, all my talks over there, never mention the word of the weevil, because it's not an issue. You're not creating that situation for the weevil population. They are in the woodlands, and they will, whatever effect they have, but they're absolutely never seen any effect of any weevil on that. So you're having a more healthy forest. It's a management approach. It's an ecological approach to your managing your forest. And with that, basically I leave it at that and the way forward. And I just leave it this, the difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas. as escaping from old ones, and transformation mindsets, I think, is the main thing that, yes, continuous cover forestry can, and as seen at Pro in Clora 2 weeks ago, well able and acceptable and manageable and profitable in Ireland. Sorry for the extra time.
Thanks a million, Padraig, and very, very interesting. And I think we could have spent the whole day talking about continuous cover forestry because, obviously it's very relevant and very... can I just ask, in relation to continuous cover forestry, what's your theory on why the numbers are lower? I mean, if you're doing a transformation, you do have your stumps, and potentially they could be spruce stumps. Is there any particular reason why the numbers are lower?
I suppose because you have, in a Clearfield scenario, you just have so many more stumps for the population to explode. I imagine that you're creating gaps in like there are stumps, but there will be natural regeneration, and you probably have an awful lot more plants around. There's probably an awful lot of other, there's a bit of other woody material around that they can feed on. But in all my talks, it's never ever been an issue or even a consideration, and I've never seen a kind of, you'd look at a plant dying in where you see natural regeneration occurring. It hasn't been a consideration because you're not creating the situation for it.